I've had to learn to not punish myself for not being everything to everyone, but to be honest about my capacity and to not judge myself for my capacity, and to trust God with other people, because that's another thing that I think we have to learn to do. If we're honest, a lot of us want to be Jesus Jr. and we just spread ourselves so thin, but even Jesus took time away.
Sometimes pastors have to speak to congregations here about finding balance and the benefit of finding balance for your business, for your ministry, for whatever it is God's calling you to do. I'm so excited to have my friends Touré and Sarah Roberts here. And Touré has written a book called Balance, and it's about this exact topic. Welcome, guys. It's so great to see you.
Thank you. We're so glad to be here.
Yeah. So first, how is your church going? I know this, we've been in this long period of COVID where a lot of churches, took a big hit. I know my church did. People obviously couldn't go to church for a long time, a lot of fear. How have you experienced that pastorally?
Yeah, it's been, we've, experienced our challenges much like all the churches in the world did. But we did invest a lot of money in technology and production over the past several years, unbeknownst to us that would be all that we would have to rely upon. So things have gone well. We had that investment in place. We went completely online, didn't go back to in-person services until Easter of this year, so we were out for 2 years. And it's been really, really good. We've noticed that the church now went from local and then somewhat global to global and then somewhat local because of the online reach. And so it's gone good. Thank God we had those mechanisms in place.
I know a lot of churches, and sadly, a lot of churches went out, I don't know what else the term is, but went out of business, because they couldn't pay their lease. And yet there have been some churches that seem to have this special touch, as you did. I think you guys are both visionaries, and you probably knew beforehand, we need to get into media. We need to have these things in place. And it seems like maybe for you, what was bad for a lot of organizations and ministries ended up being a big blessing for you and for your outreach. I know a lot of people go to your church.
Yeah, I have to tell you that initially when the pandemic first hit, I was not as innovative as my husband was. I think that I was so busy grieving and longing for the way things were that I couldn't even wrap my mind around how we now respond to this new frontier. Thankfully, with my husband's prayer and covering and guidance, I began to think outside of the box. And I think that that's what the gift of the pandemic really was. Yeah. Amidst all of the other struggles and grief that were connected to it, it was an opportunity to think outside of the box, not just for us as an organization, but how can we care for our neighbors? How can we pay more attention to the essential workers that we may just generally pass by? And through that thinking outside of the box, I was able to pivot Woman Evolve, which is, my baby, my ministry and the organization that I am building to help women, to pivot them into connecting more digitally, because we were just in person only.
Can you say the name of that ministry?
Woman Evolve.
Women Evolve, yeah.
Yes,
right.
So Woman Evolve, it started in 2018 and it was just supposed to be a conference idea. But when the pandemic hit, we did virtual events, we upped our podcast, we upped our social media, our mailing list, just so that women knew that we were not going to leave them behind, even though there were many moments where it felt like we were isolated. Yeah,
that's awesome. I know you're both pastors and you think pastorally, even though you have a global outreach, you do have a local congregation in LA. LA's an interesting city, isn't it? I grew up here, and it is full of dreamers. There are a lot of people who come here, but there's a lot of people who get brokenhearted. There's a lot of successful people who are brokenhearted too, because they achieve their dreams, but it doesn't, bring them what they want. And I know you guys don't talk about this a lot, but you have a lot of influential people in your circle, a lot of high influence, leaders of businesses, celebrities, political people, influential people. And I'm sure that as a pastor, they invite you into some of the personal aspects of their life. I'm sure, did that impact this idea of balance? Were you seeing imbalance in their lives, or were there some in these high power positions that, really represented balance well, and you maybe saw, was that a part at all of putting this book together?
Yeah, I think not only was that the challenge for some of the people in the categories that you just mentioned, but it was a challenge for us.
Yeah.
As Sarah mentioned, have the Woman Evolved tour and, the books and some of the other things that we do in real estate and various things, I needed balance myself.
Right.
And I just believe that there's a solution to every challenge that we face. And, the subtitle for balance is positioning yourself to do all things well.
Yeah.
And what it says about Jesus, as you know, is that it said that he did all things well. And there was no one more busy
of course.
than Jesus. And so I was up for the challenge, yes, certainly to serve my community with that message, but also to serve myself.
No, I was just going to say, when my husband first told me about the idea of writing balance, I thought to myself, great, now I'm going to know what time to wake up. I'm going to know how much time to allocate to the gym. Like, I was ready to receive balance, especially considering, the ebbs and flows of how the world was changing. But what I learned in, sneaking over the laptop and catching a few peeks while he was writing the book is that balance had nothing to do with time management and everything to do with inner management.
Wow.
And suddenly I realized that the depletion I was experiencing, the weariness, the worry, the stress, had less to do with how I was managing my time and more to do with how I was not managing my spirit and my energy and my mental health and my soul. And so one of the things that I have personally just gained and learned from balance is an opportunity to really take my insides more seriously so that my outsides can flourish organically.
So tell me more about that. That's really interesting. When you think about balance, in a lot of professional type books on management or leadership, there's going to be a lot of fix your calendar and this type of thing. But you're kind of saying, no, fix your heart, right? There's something going on inside your body, inside your soul, that the Lord needs to do a work on. How does a Christian view of balance differ from just a secular view about, what's different for pastors? How do we teach people to find balance in their life?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I like to unpack it in stages. But one, I think that balance is this topic where you never hear anyone say, I've got balance under control. When people are talking about balance, 99.9% of the people are saying, I need balance in my life. And so let's talk about what exactly are they saying. Essentially, when they're saying that, they're confessing that there's some area in their life that's important to them that they're not doing well in. Because at the end of the day, I'm not doing well, I'm not doing good at some particular area. So as I begin to pursue balance, I realize that I don't know if it's time management, because most people think that balance is about figuring out a way to give an equal amount of pieces of yourself to the things that matter the most. Well, that's illogical. I can't give a piece of me to my spouse. I can't give a piece of me to the congregation, to my investors. I have to give all of myself to them. And so for me, it was a redefining of balance. Okay, it's not about doing everything, because God knows we can't do everything. It's about becoming the best version of yourself and then giving that to the things that matter, to your spouse, to your kids, to your work, etc. So I think from a Christian perspective, the best way that I can describe it is Jesus has this encounter with the Pharisees, and they're accusing him. They're, as they always did.
Yeah, of course.
They're accusing him, and they were accusing something that he was doing. And he said, oh, no, and I'm paraphrasing. He says, oh, no, I know that what I'm doing is right because I only do what I see my Father do. Now, that's a profound statement. I only do on earth what I see my Father do in heaven. So essentially, he was saying that I see a version of myself in the heavenly realm, and I am aligning with that version of myself and living out my life here, therefore, I'm winning, I'm doing the right thing. And so for the Christian, I like to use the term alignment. For me, I believe that when God spoke to Jeremiah in Jeremiah 1, and he says, before I formed you in the belly, I knew you and I ordained you and I did all these sort of things. My interpretation of that is that he is speaking to two Jeremiahs. He's speaking to the Jeremiah that he's talking to about a Jeremiah that has already been perfected. And so for a Christian, for a believer, what the Holy Spirit does is the Holy Spirit allows us to be the version of ourselves that we want to be but can't access outside of the Spirit. So I know I went around the, around the mountain with that, but that's what balance is. Balance is figuring out how to be here who God has called me to be there, and bringing those two planes together. And if I am the Touré that God foreknew before he put me in my mother's womb, if I'm working the disciplines to live out, to align with that person, then everything that I do, marriage, family, business, pastoring, I'm going to be able to do well.
If you're just joining us, I'm interviewing Touré Roberts about his new book. We're here with Touré and Sarah, and this book, Balance, is so good. And I think it's something that people today really need in their lives, because people think, if I just give it 110% and burn the candle at both ends, that'll make me more successful. But one of the things I love in your book is that you kind of show us that when you find balance in your life, you'll actually be more successful than if you're just burning yourself out constantly. And I hope it's okay for me to ask this, because you just mentioned it briefly, but you know, for all those people, we have a lot of people maybe that are watching that aren't Christians, or sort of dipping their toe in the water of faith, you know? And I'm sure we have CEOs and business leaders that are watching. You had mentioned earlier you're in real estate, and you said, you know, my investors or something. It's interesting to hear you, and you've got this conference that you're doing. You guys aren't just limited to church. You have media, you have these other businesses. First of all, would you mind telling me a little bit more about those other aspects? And if you have this entrepreneurial CEO type thing and you're a pastor, how do you find time for like your family and, I don't know, you know, doing whatever's fun? And how do you find that balance?
There's a difference between who I am and what I do. Who I am remains consistent. I love God. I'm a father. I'm a husband. You know, I'm a leader. Those things are really essential to who I am as a human being. How I make money, you know, the good that I do through business that impacts the world, all those things are extensions. And so that, for me, just even that mentality is one of the things that keeps me in balance. I am not what I do. I am who I am, and I choose to do that which will preserve who I am. And so in some seasons, you know, I have to put the business aside. Look, I'm not investing anything right now. I'm not doing any deals right now. My wife needs me. My children need me. And so it is about sequence. You know, when I talk about balance, you know, you can do it all, just not all at the same time. So being still enough to perceive what part of me is screaming for attention, what part of me needs me the most, that stillness and the clarity pertaining to that comes in the stillness is one of the ways that we manage all that stuff. I hope I answered your question.
I think you did. No, you know, because it's interesting when, because we know a lot, and I know a lot of pastors, you know, and most pastors are very honed in on just their ministry, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you guys are you're so much broader in your vision for what's possible, and I'm sure there's a lot of crossover between these worlds. I'm sure you learn a lot in the business world that works well for your ministry, or vice versa, relationally, you pastorally, you know how to deal with people, and that helps you, you know, when you're negotiating or dealing with people. I just think it's really interesting, and especially because if anybody didn't have balance, it would seem like it would be someone that has so much going on, you know, as you do. And I think it's valuable for people at home to know, oh, he's just a pastor, of course he's finding balance because all he has to do is go to church on Sunday, but you've got a lot going on. You know, it's interesting, Sarah, when I hope it's okay for me to ask this, but you were talking about looking over, you know, Touré's shoulder. I'm picturing you like coming by, like, how's it going? You know, like, you write about me yet? You know, this kind of thing. Did you notice, I know a lot of times authors will go through personal change. They say if you want to learn something, teach it, you know. Did you notice a change at all in Touré as he was like balancing his, you mentioned balance in your own life you found, but did you see any change in him?
Absolutely. He changed tremendously while writing this book. As a matter of fact, he went away to write the book and got about halfway through, which is about 25,000 words, and then scrapped it all. Scrapped it all,
oh,
which
my gosh.
25,000 words is that's not chump change.
Yeah, that's death.
That is a loss in the family. And so he said he wanted to start over. What I noticed about him is that while he was writing the book, it's like God was changing the definition that he had when he first began. And I think the greatest sacrifice that you had to make was not being married to your definition of balance, but to really be open to what God was saying, even if it meant it was different from the proposal, even if it meant it was different from where he started, because what was most important to him was that it was what he saw his Father in heaven doing. And I think that I saw him, pour himself out. I saw him dig deeper. And as a result of it, I don't believe that there could have been a better time for this book to have been written, because so many of us are straddling the fence of the old normal and the new normal. And is it okay to miss it? And how do I walk into this new phase of my life without feeling uncertainty or insecurity? And yet there is a way for us to show up in our lives that doesn't make us feel inadequate or less than or overwhelmed and stress. And I feel like that's what I needed more than anything. And I know that people are already being so blessed by that.
I know, so Pastor, I mean, I know there's a lot of people, we talked about CEOs and, you know, influential people, but there is a certain type of person that works just as hard as they do, or even harder, and that's that single mom that has 2 jobs and has to take the bus. Does this book speak to them? What do you say to a mom who says, you know, I'm in this horrible position. I didn't ever think I would get here. I didn't get to go to school or college, and I'm working these jobs, and I'm trying to take care of my kids. How does someone like that, who feels totally trapped, find balance in her life?
You know, there's a chapter in the book called "There's No Team in I."
Oh yeah, turn it around.
And obviously that's a play on the popular saying, "There's no I in team." And I think that the challenge with all of us, particularly the single mom, is that no one gave her, or whomever this would apply to, permission to prioritize themselves. Self-prioritization sounds like selfishness, sounds ungodly, or what have you. But when we look at the scripture, Jesus said, love the Lord. When he's asked what the greatest commandment is, he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. The majority of the people don't recognize that sequence. They think that it is God, neighbor, self, but it is not. It is God, self, neighbor. In fact, you love your neighbor. The benchmark that qualifies how well you love your neighbor is how well you love yourself. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so I think that what they're going to find in this book, first and foremost, is permission to prioritize themselves, permission to say no, and not feel bad about it, and not feel guilty about it. And they're going to learn that self-prioritization is how you prioritize the other things that are in your life.
Good.
If the single mom is running and gunning and can't stop and won't stop to ever pause, reflect, spend, God time, alone time, self-care time, then they're functioning under this false idea that they're actually helping their children, they're helping their husband, they're helping their church in many cases, but they're actually hurting it because they can't bring their best self to it.
I mean, that's really the thing, isn't it? There's so many parents, moms, who just get so into that rhythm of always going, that if I stop and I go to a movie or go to the spa or go on a date, or something like this, you feel like guilty. Oh, my kids need me. They didn't get to see me today. I'll do it tomorrow. And overcoming that shame is a big part of finding balance, isn't it?
It certainly is. I was a single mom, and I can remember trying to overcompensate and be 2 parents, even though I was just one. And in taking care of my 2 children at the time, one of the things that I really had to remind myself is that I'll never be able to be 2 parents, but I can be one really great parent.
Oh, that's
and
great.
in being one really great parent, I'm going to have to take time for myself so that I know what I'm feeding my children, and not just what I'm putting on the table, but what's in my heart, what's in my soul, because at the end of the day, they're going to feed from the environment that I create. And so one of the lessons that I learned as a single mom that I've even taken into my incredible partnership with my husband is the ability to communicate with my children on a level that they can understand how I'm feeling. So I have a 6-year-old, and sometimes she wants to read me a book while I'm cooking dinner and trying to respond to an email. And I'll say, I want to give you all of my attention. So if you give me 1 second to finish this email, I'll be all yours. If you let me turn the burner down, then I can be all yours. yours, because my tendency when I'm stressed or out of balance is to say, girl, like, what do you want from me?
Exactly,
Like, I've been talking to people all day. I'm not
Yeah.
ready to talk to a 6-year-old, or I'm letting the food burn. Like, forget dinner. We're going to McDonald's. I'm ready to quit everything because I didn't just communicate that, like, I'm not in a place to do everything. And so I've had to learn to not punish myself for not being everything to everyone, but to be honest about my capacity and to not judge myself for my capacity, and to trust God with other people, because that's another thing that I think we have to learn to do. If we're honest, a lot of us want to be Jesus Jr.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can say that on TBN, but
no,
it's
you
been
can.
said now.
Can.
We want to be Jesus Jr. I want to be there for every single thing that's happened to you. I want to hear everything you have to say, and we just spread ourselves so thin. But even Jesus took time away.
That's right.
Even Jesus said, I need to breathe. And so while we're practicing being Jesus Jr., we might as well put on the full costume and go out into the wilderness, to go out away from our disciples and our friends and our followers, and now say, God, Holy Spirit, this is what I need. This is where I am in need. So before I show back up to the multitudes, whatever your multitudes look like, you're full of the presence of presence of God and the presence of yourself.
You've really lived this, and I'm sure there had to be times during that season of your life where you felt like, I'm going to be stuck here for a long time, or you felt like, I'm not a good mom. A thought came to me as you were talking and saying this, and I'm like, I think if you feel guilty about taking time for yourself, that's a pretty good indicator that you're probably a pretty good parent. Right? Because bad parents don't feel guilty about ditching out on their kids. It's the good parents that, if you're already probably doing a pretty good job, if you have the sense like, I can't leave. And so you're just giving people permission today to invest in yourself, right? Investing in yourself is one of the best ways you can invest in others. That's kind of one of the idea I'm getting from your book, is that when I spend time here with the Lord or in a way to refill my tank, I'm going to be the kind of parent my kids need. I don't need to feel guilty.
Not only that, you're going to be the kind of spouse that your partner needs. You know, because one of the things when Touré and I first got married, he would go for the weekend and he would take some time to pray and be in the presence of the Lord, and to maybe do a little shopping and eat a little sushi.
It's very spiritual. Very spiritual.
Fish and 5 loaves of bread, fish and rice. It's giving sushi. And I had to really deal with my heart about that, because I think, to me, I want to say I felt abandoned, but the truth is that I was really kind of jealous that he was able to take that time away. And then he goes, you take your time too. And when we gave one another space to do that in the context of our marriage, we became better partners to one another. Now, we weren't like off the map. You know, he could find me and call me, and I can do the same. But it's an opportunity for us to breathe and exhale, because we're constantly breathing in so much.
It's funny when you said that. I remember hearing that, and I don't know if you've seen this, but resentment is located not in anger, but in envy.
Yeah, I saw that with Brene Brown.
That's who it was. Yes. It was Brene Brown. And that hit me so hard. I was like, so what you were saying was just that exact thing, that if you're feeling some resentment towards your spouse, and let's be honest, if we feel resentment, it's usually towards a spouse. You know, a lot of times and there's something about what the spouse is doing that you're envious of. So it's like the way to get rid of that anger sometimes is to find a way to do what they're doing too, right? And you know, just looking at you guys, you seem like you're in love. You seem like you have a great marriage. You're so fashionable and successful. But I'm sure there's people on TV that are going, you know, I'll never have something like that, or, you know, or like, oh, of course they have balance in their life. But do you have challenges in your marriage, in your family, things you face? I mean, I know you do. I mean, but it's hard when people are at home. They don't always see it because you look so great. What are some ways that do you have challenges, first of all, if you don't mind me asking such a personal question? Of course you do. But how does this idea of balance speak more to, especially in marriage, how it can help you with your marriage?
Yeah, I think that the individual is the center point of balance. And again, in a marriage, in a relationship, you are often so connected to things that are outside of you that's where the challenge comes in. When you look at a marriage, you've got 2 people involved in that marriage. I have discovered that when each person is well, that's when the marriage does well.
Yes.
And so the idea of balance for me, honey, you mentioned capacity earlier, and I thought that was a phenomenal word as it relates to balance, because here is the truth. We all have a limited capacity. In fact, we ourselves are a limited resource. And so balance is about protecting that. It's about acknowledging, hey, I'm getting close to empty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like and if I hit empty, that's too far. You know, when you think about driving a car, you know, if you get to empty, you're on the side of the road. Right. And so you have signs and you have gauges in your car. And sometimes just a flat out knowing, wait, I've been driving for 4 days.
Yeah.
You know, and so it is to fill up. It is to recognize that if my tank goes low, we're going to have problems in our marriage, right? If my tank goes low, I'm not going to have the patience or the awareness to perceive where my kid is and what my kid needs.
Yeah.
And so challenges, sure we do, because all of us flirt with the E line, don't we? You know,
empty.
We flirt with empty.
Yeah.
But I have learned, see, all it takes, I'll tell you a story. I ran out of gas one time, and it was not fun.
Yeah.
All it took me was one time to run out of gas to say, I'm never gonna run out of gas again. So we practice balance. We recognize that, man, if I'm on empty, you know, I'm gonna be fussy when I come home. I'm not gonna have patience. I'm not gonna be nurturing, and God forbid. Here's the thing, the person that I am when I am not balanced is not this guy that's sitting here.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you know.
Wait, when you say you ran out of empty, I thought you were talking about your car, but you meant personally.
Oh, no. Well, both.
Yeah. I want to ask you,
Yeah.
as a pastor, because as pastors, you know, people think we're these living saints, but we're not, right? We're broken and we have things we deal with. Was there ever a time where you were so overstretched that, like you would say that my life was completely out of balance, even though I was a Christian and I loved the Lord? And
yeah, I mean, I think it certainly has happened. I think that's the impetus for this book.
Yeah.
You know, what it looks like when that happens, you know, and, you know, it looks like nothing to give. And that's the worst thing for a pastor. The worst thing for a pastor is to dread getting up to speak. The only reason why any pastor would dread getting up to speak is because he ain't got nothing to say.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, we love communicating. We love people. We love sharing. We love growing. So when I'm like right now, you know, for example, I've got pastors up this week because I've been on my book tour.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been giving from LA to New York.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but recognizing that, not being ashamed, not saying, oh, my flock's gonna fall off if I don't get up there and preach. No, your flock is gonna fall off if you get up there and preach, because you're not gonna have anything to share.
That's it.
So I leverage my team. What it looks like for me when I'm out of balance is I have nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and here's the thing. It's okay to not have nothing.
Yeah.
It's just knowing what to do when you get there.
And there's a bit of ego in it too, isn't there? That only I can do everything.
Right.
I think everybody needs me. I mean, that's a kind of a check too, isn't it? And that's something I struggle with, where it's like only I can speak. Oh, and only I can go on the book tour, and only I can do this.
Yeah.
And
or only I can do it well.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake. That's a mistake, because here's the thing: when you get out of the way, you'll realize that there are people on your team and in your staff that will crush what you think that you have to do. Or, you know, maybe it's not that. Maybe they may not crush it like you, but you need the rest. What's more valuable right now in this season is your rest. And so, ego gets in there. And, you know, I have this chapter in the book. It's called Balance After the Blow. It's powerful. It's one of the most powerful chapters. It's about regaining your equilibrium after some unexpected setback happens to you, death of a loved one, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And one of the points is going into what I call power save mode, energy save mode, where I am operating on fumes. And when I'm operating on fumes, my energy, the best thing to call it is energy, my strength is reduced. And so now I have to pause and be a strategic energy investor and delegate and do all these things. I just, this book, you know, I know we're talking about this book, but it's changing my life, and I wrote it.
And it's, oh, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, if I can chime in, I co-pastor with my husband, but I don't speak every Sunday.
Yeah.
So I may not relate fully to the every Sunday pressure of having to get up and speak. But I do a lot of things at my house and in my home, and they're pretty daily.
Yeah.
And in doing those things, I've got a little ego when I start thinking I'm the only one who can do certain things. Like, I'm the only one who can cook the dinner.
Yep.
I'm the only one who can do the girls' hair. I'm the only one who can do the homework. I have put this pressure on myself to be the only one who can do it. And what I am learning is that I do take pride in making an incredible meal for my family. I do take pride in the way I do the girls' hair and the homework and all of those things. But I've also learned that it is not the end of the world if we order in. It is not the end of the world if they walk around and their hair is not brushed today. At the end of the day, sometimes I have to choose my wellness, my health over trying to be super mom, because there's an imaginary badge that comes with that. Sometimes you got to be willing to take the cape off.
Listen, the most important person in your life is you. Now that seems crazy. It's like, it seems so unchristian, unspiritual, but it's not true. If you're not good, God can't use you.
Yeah.
If you're depleted, if you're, one of the chapters about the 5 signs of imbalance, weariness is one of them. When you go from being tired to weary, you are on your way down. A lot of great leaders have fallen, not because they were bad people, not because they were immoral people, it's because they were tired people. They were weary people. So to steward me is ministry. To steward me first. As goes me, so goes the church, so goes everything. And I think that that's something that there's a paradigm shift that is needed. If I'm not well, my church can't be well. If I'm not well, my business can't be well. If I'm not well, my marriage can't be well. So self-prioritization is everything.
Let's talk about some practical steps. What's something that, like, anybody today can do right now that would help them find better balance in their life?
I think the first step to balance is actually not a step, it's to stop. I have discovered that it takes more faith to stop than it does to go and to start something new. And the reason why it takes a lot of faith to stop is because most people believe that if they actually would stop, the world would come crumbling down overnight. They would be bankrupt, they would be out of a job, that whole bit. But even, our Lord taught us in the very beginning the principle of the Sabbath. And Sabbath doesn't mean rest. Rest is connected to Sabbath, but that Hebrew word literally means to cease.
Interesting.
To stop.
Yeah.
And so God, right there in Genesis, is teaching us a fundamental principle that it is actually okay to stop. And the one who set your universe in motion and set everything that you're proud of in motion can sustain it and maintain it while you take time to recreate yourself, right? And so I think the first step is to stop. Now, the reason why stopping is so important is because life is noisy.
Yeah.
Life, and here's the thing, life is noisy, but people don't realize how noisy life is because noisy has become normal.
Yeah.
It isn't until you actually stop that you realize, oh my God, my norm is noise, right? And so what's the challenge with noise? Why is noise such a problem? Noise is a problem because you cannot be connected to God's voice in the noise. And so what if God is saying, it's time to make a left, or it's time to sow in this field, or to do that? Well, you're just going and going and going and going, and you're headed towards God knows what.
Yeah.
And so I think the first step is to stop, to get still, and then that's going to bring you to an awareness, right? Because one of the things that the noise does, and I can talk about this all day, so just interrupt me if you want. But one of the things about the noise is the noise disconnects you from reality. It only connects you to the reality of everyone else. So you've got your cell phone, and if you are on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, what you're doing is you are experiencing the proposed realities of other people. Right? So you don't know if it's your thought. You get on social media, and if you just scroll your timeline and you've got 10 posts, you can go through 10 different emotions. I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm jealousy, all that sort of stuff. And so balance, the first step to balance is stopping so that you can become aware.
It's such a good word. I remember this revelation I had when I was at a nice restaurant with my wife, and we were at a dinner, and I was looking at everybody was on their cell phone. A lot of people were on like this amazing restaurant with this incredible chef and this amazing expensive experience, you know, you got a babysitter. And sometimes you see couples and they're both on their phones, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then the funny thing is my wife got up to go to the bathroom, and you know what was the first thing I did?
Yeah.
I reached for my phone. It was like compulsive. Well, I couldn't just be there and eat the food. I couldn't just enjoy the space or the music or the design of the building or pray or just have a smile on my face. I had this thing built into me. I'm a pastor, you know?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be praying. And I don't feel guilty. Like I grabbed it as I'm judging these people.
Right.
I'm like, kind of like looking at them with this critical eye. And then my wife gets up to go to the bathroom, and I'm like, boop. And I didn't have any, there wasn't like nobody was calling me.
No.
I opened my phone. I didn't know why. I didn't know what I was going to do when I opened my phone. It was compulsive.
Yeah.
But is your thumb on autopilot where like you don't even know how you got on Instagram?
Right.
Like I went to check my message,
Right.
now I'm on Instagram.
Totally.
Or I went to check the email and now I'm doing this. No, the phone is
And
not.
it's by design, and that's the thing. It's by
Absolutely.
design. 13 years, so my background is business and technology.
Yeah.
So I used to build data centers for Fortune 100 companies.
Wow.
And I had a guy come to me easy 15, 16 years ago, and he was trying to pitch me something. I should have bought it actually, but he was trying to pitch me this concept that was undergirded by the fact that everything was going to come to your phone, you know. And I'm like, get out of here!
Whatever.
You're crazy.
Yeah.
Like your phone, no, get out of
Sure.
here.
Yeah.
And so the design, watch this. We are distracted by design. You know, corporate isn't bad. You know, I believe in capitalism, and you know, I
Yeah,
believe.
sure.
In, I'm not. You know, that's my
They
preference.
want us to be distracted.
Yeah.
It is, you are distracted by design. It's interesting, the phrase, pay attention. I think I understand why they use the phrase pay attention, because your attention is expensive.
Yeah.
It costs something. Your eyeball, I think it's, I had all the numbers at one point, but your attention is worth billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And so when we are paying attention to something, we are paying
And
for
we're
that attention.
losing. It's like there's this old fairy tale I remember, and it's about this little boy who can pull a string anytime he goes through something bad in life. It was given to him by a fairy. And so every time he goes through something bad in life, he pulls a string and his life fast forwards. And then he gets to the end of his life and he regrets that he didn't endure all the suffering. It's very Russian, you know, fairy
like
tale.
that.
And to me, that's what we're doing. Our phone is like a little bit of the string we can pull where we can check out of life.
Yeah.
But maybe we're missing out. Sometimes even the boredom, which is a type of suffering, is a space where God can speak to us.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
so good.
I had a friend of mine that he said, I wonder how many miles, if we could record it, we've done on our Instagram. Like if you think, okay, I just moved
scrolling.
like,
Wow.
you know,
Wow.
6 inches, you know, 8 inches, whatever. Like, I wonder how many miles we've done just doing this on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is that we're on. And I think there's a hunger, Touré, for what you're writing about, that people, they want to regain, you know, some life again.
Yes.
And they want freedom. Like, how do we, and balance is the word, because there's some people like, get rid of your cell phone. But that's not
Right.
balance either, right?
No.
You need a cell phone to do you can't even go to Disneyland without a cell phone, you know? So how do we find, I guess there's a part of balance that's probably discipline, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's so I talked about stopping to come to a place of awareness, but the awareness that I'm talking about is not necessarily self-awareness. Self-awareness is a popular buzzword, and it's a wonderful thing to be aware of self, what you're doing, why you're doing it. Maybe you can make some corrective measures and changes or what have you. But there's another level to self-awareness, and that is soul awareness. And the reason why understanding the difference between self-awareness and soul awareness is so critical is because the soul is after something. The soul is longing for something. And if you don't stop to get still, then you will misinterpret the longing of the soul, which is God, which is alignment with God, which is connection with God. You will misinterpret that longing and try to appease self through the things that we do, through social media, through drugs and alcohol, through relationships. And so this message is everything, and it talks about how to get down to the longing of your soul, because your soul is after something.
That's good.
Your soul wants something, and your soul is intelligent,
Yeah.
and it knows where to find what it needs.
Sarah, you were talking earlier about, there was something you said at the beginning of this conversation about, and it was philosophical, but it was something like, you thought balance was about time management, but it was actually about something God was doing like inside of you.
Yeah.
Like you were looking at it. What did that look like practically in your life? Can you give like a story or an example where?
Sure. For me, it was during the pandemic, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to balance everything. The kids are now home full time.
Yeah.
You know, we've got dinner, we've got lunch, and I've got businesses, and I had a book that was due at the time. And I was trying to figure out the time management, and I really just felt like the presence of the Lord saying, like, you're stressed about all that you have to do, but there is only one thing that you need to do. I felt very much like Martha in that moment. And I wasn't selecting that good thing that Mary selected. And when I took the time to really select that good thing, for me, honestly, I have found that good thing in waking up earlier, because I'd end up getting to the end of the day thinking to myself, there's not enough time in the day for me to take care of myself. There's not enough time in the day for me to pray and meditate and breathe and enjoy a book or get a workout. And so there is time. I just, I love sleeping like Jesus loves the church. Like, that's that's my second love. This is my first love. But
That's
sleeping is like my second love. But I started waking up earlier, about 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And in the stillness and quietness of the house, I had an opportunity to pray, meditate, work out, watch an episode of This Is Us, all before getting the girls up ready for their routine. And so I had to find the time to really check in with my soul so that I could really determine what I could do for the day. Because there are some mornings I wake up and I'm like, I can't complete this day with all of these meetings and expectations. So I could readjust and reshift early in the morning and make room for me to be present in the very life I was trying to build.
And morning's a big one, isn't it? I mean, that's how you're kind of starting your day. I think there's this myth that there's a morning person and a night person, but you're just a morning person if you go to bed earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, you just got to change it. It's like changing a time zone. If there's no such thing as a morning person and a night person, then how do we travel? You adjust. So I think that you're right, that beginning of the day, and it's a way of investing in yourself too. That's kind of the theme here, is not feeling guilty having a quiet time, not feeling guilty getting alone time, not getting away. As you said, you said like Jesus loves the church. I thought you were going to say like Jesus loves napping, because he does love napping too.
That is true.
You remember? I mean, like you think about the story, where Jesus
Sleeping
is
through the
sleeping
storm.
in a storm.
If that is not a mother sleeping through kids yelling, I don't know what is.
Good word.
We don't have a high priest that doesn't know what it's like to be one of us.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, he was totally just like us and faced what we face. And God didn't make us too busy, did he?
Yeah. No.
He didn't. And God wants to be with us, and he has a way. And maybe there's a faith element too. I think that sometimes, especially if we're really in a corner, financially especially, that it takes a little faith to say, I'm going to dial back, even though there might be some financial loss, and trust that God's going to fill that gap. Do you think that's a good thing to do?
It's absolutely. That was me this week. I'm negotiating several significant deals. And I put them all on hold, and you know business, and particularly at the early stage of investing in something, time is of the essence. If you get in early and right, then you can secure a greater position in what you're in. And just this week, because I was pretty depleted from my book tour, there are things that fear could make me think it cost me a whole lot of money, but I put them off. My rest is more important to me. I took one of those deals now because I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
no, I'm kidding.
Sure,
but I had capacity for that one. And the others I put off. And I just believe that God will never penalize you for prioritizing you.
Yeah, it's
He
good.
will never penalize you for getting good and well with him. Because at the end of the day, here's one thing I think is important. Jeremiah 29:11. We all know it. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope. Well, we have to see that right. If we look at that and think that God is talking about bringing things into our lives, we missed it. Look at what he says. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope. The focal point on that promise is not what he's going to bring to you.
Yeah.
The focal point of that promise is him prospering or making whole and well you.
Yeah. And also, I think that passage is located to the people in exile, not the people at home.
Yeah.
So they're dealing with a punishment, a judgment, something that went not go the way they thought it would be. They're Hebrew people among the Babylonians. They're not a people. They're not of a home. They're exiled. They're away from the promised land. And and just before that, I think I hope I got this right. I vaguely remember this, but I think God says to them something like, basically, like, bloom where you're planted.
Yes.
Like, be here for now.
Yes.
I'm going to get you home, but for now, be here. It's okay. I've got this under control.
Build cities.
And then I know the plans I got for you.
Yes.
I got for you. I changed it.
No,
plans I have for you. But that's a good word. It's so often. It's like the thing I'm learning from you during this interview is like the sense is like God's not forcing us to be in a noisy place all the time. He's not forcing us to be on our cell phones all the time. He's not forcing that. Sometimes the release of some of these things is going to open our hands for maybe the gift He has for us, kind of. Is that right?
Progress comes from the place of rest.
Good.
Of rest. When I look at every significant thing that has happened to me in life, it was not from the place of stress, of worry, of hustle and bustle. Every significant dimension elevating thing that has happened to me happened when I found a way to rest in God. There's a chapter in the book called The Gift of Rest, and that's what it's about. And so rest is not something that happens from without you. Coming to that place of rest is what happens inside you. It's Philippians chapter 4, you know. Don't be anxious about anything.
Yeah.
Prayer and supplication, make your request known to God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will keep your heart and mind. And so peace and rest is the precursor for progress.
Good.
Yeah, it's so good. We're teaching this to our children too. So our babies range from 25 to 6 years old.
Wow.
And they've got the stresses of their life on their level. So they've got a test, they've got homework, they've got marriages and college and job insecurities. And when they start to get anxious, we tell them to breathe. Take a moment, breathe. And to really allow your soul to come from a place of rest. Are you going to, did you do the best that you could do? If you did the best that you could do, then we learn and grow from here. That's all we can do. And now our 6-year-old, she's inspiring me because we'll be in the middle of dinner and we've got a large household, so everyone's loud and making noise, and she goes, I'm going to go upstairs and have some me time. And I'm like, little girl, sit down. But also go take care of yourself, because there is something about giving them the tools now to help them understand life is going to be overwhelming. You're going to find moments where you feel imbalanced at 6, at 19, at 12, and that's okay. That's a part of life, but you can come to a place within yourself where you're able to discover balance again. And she reemerges and she's all happy and ready to play, but we're giving her permission to take a minute and unplug, even if it means unplugging from us, so that she can plug in as the best version of herself.
That's such a great point too, is that if we don't take care of ourselves, we're teaching our kids not to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Like the way we treat ourselves is how the kids are going to treat themselves.
For sure, we're teaching them how to sacrifice themselves on an altar that we can't even identify or label ourselves. Sometimes it's the altar of public opinion. Sometimes it's the altar of trying to make up for something we did in our past. And we wonder how these generational curses pass down from family to family to family. It's because we never took a minute to be soul aware and ask ourselves, why do I feel obligated to do this? Is it to prove who I am? Is it to make up for what I did? And when I can come to an answer that it's pure and it's passionate, it's what God has called me to do, that's great. But the scarier thought is that maybe it's because I feel pressure and stress, and most of the time we don't really want to answer those questions, so we keep showing up and we just shut that door in the closet. But in our prayer time, in our stillness, in our meditation, we have an opportunity to ask those scary questions in the secret place. God's going to keep your secret, but you can say, I don't know why I'm doing this and I feel overwhelmed. And in that space, God gives us permission to change, to modify, or to show up differently. So that's I think, an incredible gift we get from even that soul awareness.
And what we're talking about, although very true, very biblical, very practical, can be corroborated even in psychology, the average person never slows down enough to get to that place. And that's why this message is so important.
Yeah.
This says you must stop. You cannot be who God has created you to be unless you have the faith to stop and really address what's happening inside.
At TBN, our mission is to use every available means to reach as many individuals and families as possible with the life-changing gospel of Jesus Christ.
Thank you for helping make the gospel of grace go around the world.
Without you, we couldn't do it. God bless you.